Since day one, it seemed clear as day that Sheamus was positioned to be a top talent in WWE, not just any type of talent. Many other guys have we seen win the title within their first few months in the company. Brock Lesnar is one that comes to mind, but unfortunately for Sheamus, his 2 title reigns were heavily overshadowed, and it didn't help that he was green in a main event position. He wasn't experienced yet for it. At the time, it was best to have him wrestle some rough-ass matches in the mid-card scene, and of course, compared to today, Sheamus in-ring wasn't as good, but he still had some nice matches, especially if he was in there with somebody like Kofi Kingston or John Morrison. The Celtic Warriors' arrival on SmackDown marked the beginning of a very dominant run. He was booked to hover around the title scene and was essentially a champion waiting to happen. Sheamus, unlike anybody else on the SmackDown roster, was noticeably very dominant. He almost never lost, and if he did, it was because of some interference or some nonsense. Randy Orton, Mark Henry, and the Big Show all suffered clean losses in late 2011, and it goes to show you how highly they thought of him. Otherwise, why book him stronger than Randy Orton, who was number 3 in the company at the time? Sheamus seemed comfortable in the babyface role, and initially it was fresh because he was more exciting to watch in ring. You got to cheer him pummeling some random mid-card heel like Dolph Ziggler. Like Chris Jericho, Sheamus seemed primed for a very interesting 2012. He was the strongest booked wrestler probably on the entire roster, barring Mark Henry and arguably John Cena. Original plans called for Chris Jericho to be crowned the winner of the Royal Rumble, as his return was hyped up for weeks. It seemed like a very obvious decision. However, it was Sheamus who emerged victorious to punch his ticket to WrestleMania in Miami. Why? Because I guess it came down to the idea getting leaked and being too clear, because it doesn't take a world champion to figure out, hey, Chris Jericho is winning the Royal Rumble. He returns, acts weird, and ditches CM Punk in a tag team match, and in addition, the Royal Rumble wasn't the most star-studded match. Barring Randy Orton, who returned during the match, Y2J Chris Jericho was the biggest star. So now that Sheamus was the winner, which title was he going to choose? Once again, this was crystal clear. His choice was Daniel Bryan, who was going full Diego Sanchez with the whole yes thing. Bryan was on the opposite side of Sheamus. His 2011 brought some pessimism for 2012, but near the end he pulled it out and shockingly was a world champion. His victories were half-assed, and it was always by the skin of his teeth. This match's result was essentially out of question. All fans were looking forward to was the journey getting there. Throughout the build of their clash at WrestleMania, Sheamus questioned Bryan's ability and having to rely on external interference and cheap victories to retain the title. And about the match, if you can call it that, Bryan got bounced back to the mid-card and Sheamus was crowned the new champion. After building him up for about 8 months, his time has come, and it was the exact way WWE intended it. Somebody that was very similar to John Cena, at least on paper. For Bryan, it was a tragic night. He was expecting at least 15 minutes with Sheamus, and after the debacle of last year where they wrestled in the pre-show, it was disappointing to say the least. The next night on Raw, Sheamus, the new champion, addressed the events of WrestleMania to a very negative crowd. A crowd that was clamoring for Daniel Bryan. Before he could talk, Alberto Del Rio interrupted, "Oh man, I just started this video, and we have to talk about this feud already?" Del Rio was impressed with Sheamus' victory, and all the fans could do was chant Daniel Bryan. Del Rio told him to stay put because his title reign ain't lasting long. Sheamus, on the other hand, was glad to see him and said that the fans want to see him bro kick somebody in the face. After last night, I doubt that because they were booing. Alberto Del Rio wasn't in a rush to fight, and instead he was going to fight Sheamus on SmackDown and beat him to get a title shot. His mic broke and Sheamus took advantage to drop him with the bro kick. Their match on SmackDown was marred in controversy. As you know, Sheamus is essentially a hothead, and it also didn't help that Del Rio took advantage of a blurry situation to win by DQ. Sheamus ended up dropping the ref like a bad habit, and knowing the intention was on him, he addressed his actions. Sheamus showed remorse and regret over his behavior and apologized to the referee. John Laurinaitis, though, didn't like this. This man was so irritated with the bro kick and demanded Sheamus publicly apologize to the ref, unbeknownst of what had just transpired. Sheamus lets him know, and he's like, "Oh, I want to hear it again." Then he told him to apologize to all the referees, and at this point Sheamus was close to dropping him, but swallowed his pride and did it. And of course he asked him to apologize to the world. He thought it wasn't good enough, so Laurinaitis put him on probation and threatened to fire him if he attacked the ref again. To top it all off, he fined him $500,000. Laurinaitis booked him in a tag team match against Daniel Bryan and Alberto Del Rio with Mean Gene Okerlund, his partner. This turned out to be a good one for Sheamus, not so much for Daniel Bryan. At the same time, let's just say his stock was up like never before. For Bryan, his loss at WrestleMania was cheap. Sheamus took advantage of the situation, but the American Dragon assured everyone that Extreme Rules in Chicago, he's gonna surprise the world. His intention was to out-wrestle Sheamus like a real man, and it will be confirmed that Sheamus was a coward kicking him at WrestleMania. John Laurinaitis still had it out for Sheamus, so he had Daniel Bryan officiate his match with Mark Henry. Bryan screwed him over so hard, it was a disgrace. But since this is WWE, he didn't protest the victory, he went after him. Bryan had far too much momentum at this point, and went for the yes lock before running away. Sheamus called him a snake and said that they did stuff to snakes in Ireland, and Bryan should pray if he heard about those stories. Alberto Del Rio, meanwhile, was very confident that whoever wins at Extreme Rules will lose to him. Bryan didn't really care about what he said, but he certainly did when Sheamus mentioned 18 seconds and got the crowd to chant it at him. With that said, Extreme Rules provided Daniel Bryan the platform to avenge his loss. It was 2 out of 3 falls. He's a world-class wrestler, so the advantage was in his favor, and for Sheamus, it was a chance to prove that maybe, just maybe, WrestleMania wasn't a fluke. For many years, I've considered this to be Sheamus' best match in WWE. That's of course changed. These two did not have an outright proper match, which looking at this was somewhat messed up, until now. The first fall was rough. Both men were really hurting badly from targeting each other's legs and arms, and Bryan in particular found success working on the arm. Men slowed down the pace and allowed for his tactic to materialize to the point where Sheamus' arm would become a red target. The challenger, however, didn't beat out the fight, and the champion, and Bryan's pitbull-esque aggression made him see the arm as his gateway to victory. Sheamus' arm was in critical condition, and the only thing that could save him was the bell. That's exactly what happened. Bryan didn't complain about having until 5 here, and he decided to non-stop assault the arm to the point where he lost the fall. By the time the ref started the second fall, the challenger had an easy win. Now they're tied, and Bryan was in a position to become the new champion. The Chicago crowd was all in on the American Dragon, and Sheamus was faltering. He was struggling to even stand up, but he had too much pride, and once the third fall began, boom, he hit the bro kick. Still not enough, and at this point, even though he took a bro kick, the edge was still with Daniel Bryan. Sheamus was too busy defending his shoulder from popping out, but he eventually found his opening and used it to hit the bro kick to retain the title. Awesome match. Sheamus' storyline had to really work for that title victory. He was up against a pro wrestling tactical genius, and even though he was battered and broken, he still found the will to pull out the victory and retain the title. On the surface level, Bryan and Sheamus' issues were somewhat resolved. What I mean by that is they still hated each other, but Bryan had a WWE title shot, so now it was Alberto Del Rio's time. This didn't stop him from attacking Sheamus with Del Rio later that week on SmackDown. Bryan and Del Rio's issues were simple. He interfered in my match, my business, and he should stay out of it. The American Dragon still wanted a rematch with Sheamus, but Eve was the boss, and he did get that match, but unfortunately for him, the Celtic Warrior made the most out of this situation and dropped him with a bro kick in midair. For Del Rio, it was a sign of what's to come. Unfortunately for both men, their drama started involving Chris Jericho and Randy Orton. During a tag team match on Raw, Sheamus accidentally hit the bro kick on Orton. Jericho capitalized and beat Sheamus, who was unbeaten for several months, and at this point, Jericho felt that he laid his claim to the title. Then to top it all off, Orton dropped Sheamus with an RKO, and the heels started arguing over this match when Orton came in, and it turned into a brawl. Sheamus confronted Orton over this, and he said that his clumsy ass dropped him, and it was a rough situation. So John Laurinaitis made Sheamus' title match over the limit a fatal 4-way. The rematch with these four was far too intense, and once again, it didn't have the most simple ending. And it was almost the same thing at the end of the night. Final Raw before the pay-per-view saw the usual drama, and at one point on SmackDown, Sheamus scored a victory on Randy Orton, but once again, it was the Viper who stood tall. As for their match, the emphasis was mostly on Sheamus and Randy Orton. Chris Jericho, maybe. Alberto Del Rio was overshadowed, even though he was essentially the industry plan at the time. They're trying to remind you that this guy was going to be a huge challenger for the title. Who knows, maybe even winning. With that said, this was pretty damn good. Then again, it has Sheamus, Randy Orton, Chris Jericho, and Alberto Del Rio. So, what else would you expect? Jericho and Del Rio formed a friendship that quickly went terribly. The crowd was popping. Orton brought them the most excitement, but of course, Del Rio has to ruin everything. And at this point, man, if Orton would have won this match, it would have been insane. I also think they would have been fine with Jericho too, but in the end, it was the Celtic Warrior who emerged victorious. Man of the match is easily Randy Orton though. Awesome stuff. Fatal 4-ways always deliver, and this isn't a standout, but it does its job, and it's a very important match in Sheamus' run. After accidentally bumping into John Laurinaitis, Sheamus was forced to apologize, and let's just say it was half-assed. Hell, he said that he apologized for Laurinaitis being an arse. Later that night, Alberto Del Rio won the right to challenge for the World Heavyweight Championship. When Sheamus ran out and congratulated him the only way he did on this attack, the champion said that it was a message. It wasn't more than that. He said that money couldn't buy him the World Heavyweight Championship, and out of everyone to interrupt, it was David Otunga. The reason why he was here was to get the apology from Sheamus regarding John Laurinaitis. The Celtic Warrior, though, was pretty hard-headed about it. Then Alberto Del Rio basically realized, hey, he's not going to give you an apology. He started to make fun of Sheamus. As a result of his actions, David Otunga allowed Alberto Del Rio to choose Sheamus' opponent for tonight. Once again, he refused to apologize and instead apologized for this bro kick on David Otunga. The opponent ended up being Dolph Ziggler. The show provided a challenge, but he was no match for 2012 Sheamus. Del Rio finally bounced back, locking the Celtic Warrior in the cross armbreaker on Raw, and the build to the pay-per-view was on. Del Rio saw Raw as a preview. He promised to break his arm at No Way Out, and out of everyone to interrupt, it was Sheamus Rodriguez. Del Rio admitted that this wasn't Sheamus, and he said that anybody could beat him, though, and unlike him, there's only one Alberto Del Rio. Rodriguez was making a joke out of him, and there he was. Despite the odds, Sheamus managed to send the heels running, and even then he went after them. This ended up hurting the champion, and Teddy Long came out. On behalf of the GM, he booked Sheamus in a match with Kane, and Del Rio was set to face the Great Khali. The jokes were over for Del Rio, who got to witness firsthand what the Celtic Warrior was capable of. Unfortunately, though, the match that had been hyped for over 2 months was postponed. Alberto Del Rio, during this episode of SmackDown, suffered a concussion, and they're worried over his health leading into the match. So who was his replacement? Dolph Ziggler. Ziggler at this point was in I need to get a push mode, so he was doing the most. This man was selling for his life and wrestling the hell out of anyone, and 3 things you won't hear at the same time are these: 2012, Dolph Ziggler, and disappointment. Ziggler had to rely on timing during this match because Sheamus was a one-man wrecking crew. He was throwing him around, delivering clubbing blows, and it was tough, but the challenger was out here isolating him in style. Sheamus found himself back on offense, and Dolph was back to bouncing, and at the same time, he was really pressing the champion, finding ways to escape moves, and at this point, the crowd was all in. Ziggler was like a hard-headed pit bull, but once Sheamus found form, it was over. Ziggler sold the bro kick like a fish out of the water, world class, and Sheamus retains. Good match. WWE really liked this, so they did it again later that week on SmackDown. After a contract on a pole, probably Vince Russo's idea, went south, Vicky Guerrero gave both Alberto Del Rio and Dolph Ziggler a title shot later that week on SmackDown. For Dolph, he realized that Sheamus was going to whoop his ass, and he saw that Vicky was in a position of power for that week, so he asked her to ban the bro kick, not leaving the cross arm breaker. His efforts, as intense as the demands were not met. Del Rio, meanwhile, was pissed about competing in this town, but said that he's winning tonight. As to the main event, decent match. Sheamus was solo against these two. He was getting work done, but the moment they became a team, it went south. Of course, the partnership didn't last long, and this gave way to Sheamus. The match was non-stop, fast-paced, and once again, Sheamus dropped Ziggler with a bro kick to retain the title. Now, at this point, the intention was to give Alberto Del Rio his title shot. The problem with this is that it was 3 months since the feud began. It began the night after WrestleMania, and in that time, a lot happened. AJ became a major character, Aces and Eights debuted, Chelsea won the Champions League, and Chris Jericho served a suspension for being essentially Chael Sonnen. After Alberto Del Rio bragged about coming to the US legally, making fun of others claiming they didn't, Sheamus, the human rights activist, ran in and gave him a beating. Ricardo Rodriguez gave Del Rio the edge, and they ended up assaulting him with the hood of the car. At this point, Sheamus was in a foul mood. He destroyed Jack Swagger before the challenger confronted him, and he told him that Jack Swagger is Alberto Del Rio, and this Sunday, he's taking his title. The champion responded with a bro kick. After a grueling match with Chris Jericho, Alberto Del Rio took advantage of Sheamus and delivered an assault that left the champion a battered and beaten man. For a match that was hyped for months, it just happened. Del Rio went after the arm non-stop. Almost everything he did related to hurting the arm. Sheamus makes a comeback and he scores the victory quickly. That's literally how the match went. Odd match. Afterwards, the heels attacked, and at this point, Sheamus' arm was a red target. All of a sudden, Dolph Ziggler came out with a briefcase. Del Rio gets in his face, annoying him, takes a shot to the face, and Sheamus capitalizes with a bro kick. So that happened. Unfortunately, Alberto Del Rio once again won the right to challenge Sheamus at SummerSlam. He even went as far as to refuse any match unless it's for the title. So from now until SummerSlam, he isn't wrestling. His intentions, though, were not something AJ Lee agreed on. He wasn't going to wrestle on the show initially, but screwed up saying, see, she isn't crazy. His opponent was Christian. He wrestles, and all of a sudden, Sheamus pops up on the screen, and in Sheamus' possession was something Alberto Del Rio held most dear: his car keys. Why? Ricardo Rodriguez screwed up. He decided, you know what, I'm going to go on a joyride, and by the time he returned, the vehicles liked their matches. Booker T didn't like Sheamus' actions and told him to apologize, and he did just that. Booker's like, oh, all is good, let's start the show. When Alberto Del Rio came out all frustrated, he was threatening legal action, and Booker reminded him that if he does go through with it, the title match won't happen. He realized this and told Booker T to do something about it. Sheamus took notice of this and challenged Alberto Del Rio to a title match tonight. This challenge was enticing, the fans wanted it, Booker wanted it, and he accepted. Big fight feel here when all of a sudden a bunch of police came in, and Del Rio began shouting that he never filed the report. This ended up being a setup for Del Rio to assault the champion and assert his dominance as the next champion. In light of this, Booker T was fuming. He was so pissed at this that he canceled the SummerSlam match. The challenger, upon hearing this news, was ready to confront him. He told him that the reason why he attacked Sheamus was because he was a man. He had to do it. Booker T refused to tolerate this behavior and his actions and told him that he's stepping his bounds. Out of everyone to appear, it was Chris Jericho, and damn was he over. Come to think about it, Y2J was gone for 4 years at this point, so obviously everyone would love it. Later that night, Sheamus made the save for Chris Jericho, and Del Rio ran away. Booker T came out to get a sense of what's going on, and Sheamus tried to convince him to make the match again. While Booker was lenient, seeing as Sheamus was hurt, he made the match. About that one, once again, not pleasant. It was 10 minutes of the challenger wearing down Sheamus before he actually fights back. That doesn't go well, and he finds himself in the cross arm breaker. He escapes, and this unlocks the Celtic Warrior. The match starts picking up. The LA crowd's getting into it, and at this point, Del Rio was losing his patience and assaulted his ring announcer. This tactic was to distract the ref and for Ricardo to throw the shoe. He did throw the shoe, but it was in the wrong hands, and Sheamus hits the backbreaker. Del Rio's foot is on the rope, but the ref didn't notice. The Mexican aristocrat was raging inside the ring, telling the ref that he missed it, and to To make matters worse, the next night he got screwed over again. But it wasn't all bad because on SmackDown, he tapped out Randy Orton to win the right to face Sheamus once again. Why? I don't know. This match was going to happen for the 4th or 5th time. I don't even remember. He provoked the champion throwing Ricardo's shoe at him, and this worked in his favor. To top it all off, Dolph Ziggler came in with the briefcase. He's telling the ref he's cashing in when Orton catches him with an RKO. For Alberto Del Rio, he knew that Sheamus whooped his ass in the past, but at the same time, he was on a high after tapping out Randy Orton. Del Rio was prepared to do the same to Sheamus at Night of Champions, and once again on Raw, the two men brawled. While neither man won this battle, it was Sheamus who left a lasting impression on Del Rio. Why? Because he dropped his ring announcer with a bro kick. As a result of this, Ricardo Rodriguez wore a neck brace. Del Rio was very aggressive towards him in the last couple of weeks, but since it was convenient, it's all changed now. He can use this as a weapon against Sheamus. Alberto Del Rio is seething in addition because his match against Sheamus was in his eyes unfair. He felt that the bro kick should be banned. Why? He said that his only friend Ricardo Rodriguez may have physical damage. Why? All because of that move. He said that the cross arm breaker is pure artistic, but the bro kick, that's a different story. It's a criminal act. David Otunga stopped him from losing and spoke about Sheamus' intentions using the bro kick and showed a clip if anyone thinks the move should be legal. Booker T, though, didn't believe this should turn into a public matter, but because of Otunga's ego, he just had to bring it to the people. Now, of course, when Booker asked the crowd, they answered with no. They didn't want the bro kick to be banned. To top it all off, Otunga had to face the champion in the main event. With a bro kick in his sights, Booker T miraculously saved the Harvard lawyer and revealed that he must ban the bro kick. The decision was made in light of Otunga showing him some x-rays, and add to that, the evidence was apparently overwhelming. The thing is, Otunga didn't win the match anyways. Sheamus adapted and used the Texas Cloverleaf to score the victory. This case was so intense that it made its way to WWE headquarters. Sheamus had his lawyer by his side for the deposition, and after a couple of jokes, he got serious. Otunga's asking questions and he's answering nonchalantly. Do you know Daniel Bryan? Yeah, the go face. Otunga was demonstrating that the bro kick caused mental trauma to past victims. That's to put it simply. Sheamus, on the other hand, wanted to show that the bro kick doesn't discriminate. As for Otunga, he got to experience the Texas Cloverleaf once again, and after the match, Sheamus thought screw it and dropped him with a bro kick. The SmackDown GM was horrified, and he knew that this wasn't going to reflect well on the champion and threatened to strip him of the title if he hits the bro kick again. On the final SmackDown before Night of Champions, Alberto Del Rio added insult to injury. First of all, he made Ricardo Rodriguez speak about his injury, then David Otunga, and to top it all off, Del Rio made a mention of somebody else, Christian. Captain Charisma didn't really want to get involved, but he had to. Otunga made reference of how Sheamus hit a bro kick on him, and putting aside his hatred of him, Christian felt that he should speak against the bro kick. He said that last year he was going to be a 3-time world champion and then took a bro kick. Since then, he's never been the same, and the injuries the bro kick brought him took him out for a year. Despite the respect that he has for Sheamus, Christian felt that the bro kick should be banned. He was going to say something else, but they interrupted. Daniel Bryan, on the other hand, was thankful of these three bringing up the bro kick. He called himself a victim and said that if the fans say he's got a go face, it's because Sheamus kicked him in the face several times. As for him, he shut the go face up and took Otunga's neck brace. The champion's Cloverleaf was a nice replacement for the bro kick, and similar to Monday, he emerged victorious using that same move. As for Night of Champions, let's just say that this is a W. Why? Because the feud finally ended. It was clear that there was some corrupt activity between this trio. Well, maybe the duo, because Ricardo was dumb and took off the neck brace beforehand. Right before the match began, the challenger felt that he had the edge, but unfortunately for him, Booker T's investigation had a conclusion drawn, and it wasn't good for Del Rio. Apparently, the bro kick was reinstated. Sheamus demonstrated the damage of the move on David Otunga, and it was on. The decision seemed to have rattled Del Rio, who struggled to find form early on. One minor inconvenience, though, brought him a huge opening to target the arm in order to lock in the cross arm breaker. As always, Del Rio's psychology was on point, almost every intention related to adding damage to that arm. Sheamus, on the other hand, was just delivering a beating whenever he could. At the same time, because the champion was so worried over the arm, it brought the challenger opportunities to hit devastating moves, such as the backbreaker. He had a real chance by the looks of it, and it got to the point where there was this huge sense of urgency from both men to wrap it up. Neither man got it, and instead Del Rio ended up finding an opening to repeatedly kick the arm, leading to the cross arm breaker. The pressure's on Sheamus. He's in critical condition, yet he found the will to drop the challenger, and an excellent transition from Del Rio leads to the cross arm breaker once again. At this point, Sheamus was seriously considering tapping out, but he had the heart. The challenger loses it and messes up the enziguri, and boom, bro kick. Good ass match. It only took them 4 matches, but they finally pulled it off. The reason why I like this match is because it felt smooth. The work Del Rio did on the arm was nice. His transitions into the cross arm breaker were awesome, and on Sheamus' side, he played the role of a fighting champion well. It was like a match from the beginning of his title run where he was fighting like hell to keep the title. And so concluded the feud between Sheamus and Alberto Del Rio. Was it good? Hell no. The problem with this is that the feud was prolonged over a long period of time, where a lot could have been done. Sheamus' run was heavily affected by this, and a lot of people's perception of this run is negative because of this feud. Del Rio had 4 title shots and lost every single match. Running him back a match 3 more times, it's gotta be good. This wasn't. I'll talk about this soon. On the September 28, 2012 episode of SmackDown, the Big Show kicked off the show in a very negative mood. He complained about holding the title for 45 seconds and shouted about how embarrassed and deplored he felt about it. And to make matters worse, the guy he lost it to lost at WrestleMania in 18 seconds. It was then he saw that moment or time as a turning point. Big Show felt that he was the only person that could beat Sheamus, but before he could continue, the Apex Predator Randy Orton interrupted. He thought Big Show was crazy for focusing on Sheamus when he, Orton, is in front of him. He said that no one's going to get in his way of reclaiming the world title. For Big Show, it was agreed to disagree, but for Alberto Del Rio, though, he told him to go to the back of the line. So Orton RKO'd him. Now let me get this right, the pro wrestling version of the 2012 LA Clippers is talking. Man got swept in 4 matches, yeah, he's talking about a title shot. At this point, he doesn't even deserve a shot at the 24/7 title in storyline. Because he was bitter, he attacked Orton and left him for the Big Show, who took advantage to become #1 contender. With Hell in a Cell coming up, Booker T felt that these two men should have a debate. Big Show started off with the opening statement and said that there's no reason for a debate. He's going to Hell in a Cell, he's going to drop him with a WMD and walk out with the world title. Sheamus was more about jokes and Booker started asking questions. There's the question. The champion praised himself for being a fighter and that's what he was looking forward to most here. The thing he was most concerned about is the match lasting longer than 45 seconds though. Big Show took offense to Sheamus making fun of his hygiene and then mentioned that he should stop being a funny guy. Finisher question. Of course, Big Show held his WMD in higher esteem than the bro kick, and even then he can't get his chubby foot up high. Big Show bragged about a bunch of guys he knocked out, and the champion mentioned the lack of Daniel Bryan, who was the same person that beat him in 45 seconds. Oh, hell no, a tout. The guy asking the question, Sheamus, asked how Big Show will feel when he gets knocked out. The challenger was losing it, and once again, Sheamus asked, how did it feel to lose in 45 seconds to the guy I beat in 18 seconds? They were close to brawling, but it never happened as Big Show walked away. Later that week, Big Show addressed this. He said that everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, but it's not all bad for Sheamus because after he loses, he's joining a very elite group of victims. Of course, this segment couldn't end without Sheamus coming out. The champion admitted that he wasn't taking things seriously and told him may the best man win. He tried to shake his hand, but it was a no from the Big Show. As he's leaving, Sheamus said that everyone has a plan, even Daniel Bryan, and showed a clip of the cash-in from TLC. And the frustration and emotion pouring out of Big Show, Sheamus showed a clip of WrestleMania 28 increased tenfold. Now he wants to shake his hand, so Sheamus walks away. Later that night, Big Show screwed him over in his match by dropping The Miz, and a while later, he did the very same thing to him. So the challenger gave him a sign of what's to come on Raw, showing him, hey, don't underestimate me. Seeing as both men were all up claiming their finisher is better, Booker made them test their strength. Big Show's ego got in the way at first and he refused to go first. Why? He just didn't want to. The fans booed, he's complaining, and he got all emotional. Sheamus hit the brogue kick and got a good-ass score, and JBL at this point said that a kick is always more powerful than a punch, and it was Big Show's turn. He once again refused, and Sheamus brought up 45 seconds, so he went for it and emphatically won this competition. 45 seconds was shot up in a span of 2 seconds. Sheamus tried to undermine this accolade when Tenzai attacked. With that said, Big Show had heat. His complaints were noticed by the fans and they hated him. His heel character was very different around here to his usual self, and I'll get to that. His embarrassing 45-second loss was still getting to him and the fans insulted him using it. It got to the point where Big Show wanted Daniel Bryan in a match. The fans started chanting his name and he refused. His request though was denied by AJ. He put up a fight, but Big Show was in form and he scored the victory ahead of his match at Hell in a Cell. Later that night, Sheamus was in a rough battle with Wade Barrett. Now, Big Show, of course, had to interfere. His interference flipped on his head and he had to run away because Sheamus got all angry. As a result of this, Sheamus asked Teddy Long to give him one more match with Wade Barrett. He knew that Booker T would accept the match and even added the lumberjack stipulation. As always, this was hard hitting. Sheamus won and Hoodie Big Show wasn't pleased. Right afterwards, though, Dolph Ziggler dropped him with a zigzag. He's ready to cash in when Big Show KOs him, and this was a message to Sheamus, and Big Show promised it would happen to him at Hell in a Cell. He added insult to injury, costing him his lumberjack match on Raw. On the final SmackDown before Hell in a Cell, Big Show and Sheamus were set to go face to face. Big Show called his move the strongest in WWE history and is clearly more powerful than the brogue kick. Sheamus told him he could feed his ego, and the only time the move will be lethal is if it connects. Big Show was so confident of his chances, and he recalled the time where Sheamus attempted the brogue kick and he just pushed him over the top rope. For Big Show, it's simple: you can't kick me in the head. Sheamus admitted that he was excited when Big Show won the #1 contenders match. Why? Because it was a chance to face a giant. He strives for challenges. He's beating all kinds of challengers, but Big Show's a giant. Regardless, he's gonna conquer him. The challenger called him delusional, but Sheamus though was very ambitious. It didn't matter if it took 5 or 10 bro kicks, he'll do it. But for now, it's time for fighting, and a brawl ensues. The security was 23 overall, and Sheamus never got to hit the bro kick, at least on Big Show. The build to that match was good. It was way better than the entire Del Rio and Sheamus story. Big Show's bitterness and frustration brought him to this very point, a point where he could redeem himself. Because at the end of the day, he's had a nice career. He's beaten John Cena, The Undertaker, Randy, and all these guys, but in his eyes, he'll always be remembered for 45 seconds. That's the one thing that invalidates this career, and the only way to erase that dark, distinct memory is recapturing the title. Big Show's character around here wasn't his basic regular giant. He felt almost insecure in himself and embarrassed, and in some ways, it was like he was the babyface because of Sheamus' jokes and constant undermining of the KO punch. Sheamus' strategy early on was going for the legs. If the giant doesn't have a foundation, what's left? I'd like to call his offense timed. Because Big Show is big, he had to quickly get his shots in, otherwise he's in this very same situation. The pace is slow and the challenger's taking his time in inflicting damage. Then from out of nowhere, they start turning it up. Sheamus starts fighting back. It's stiff. He's kicking out of moves, making the challenger more frustrated. And Sheamus was broken, battered, and when he took the KO punch, he kicked out. It was shocking. The fans were going crazy, and from out of nowhere, he catches Big Show with the bro kick, the same move that Big Show claimed he couldn't hit on him. At this point, he has all the confidence. Big Show's phased, but when he goes for the bro kick, he takes the KO punch. 1, 2, 3, new champion. Awesome match. Sheamus had the welts to show for it, and it was surprising. I don't think anyone expected it to be as good as it was. For the Big Show, it was a cool moment for him to finally get past the 45-second thing and begin a proper run with that title. He deserved it, especially after his heel turn where he was getting heat from the fans. And so ended Sheamus' title reign. In my opinion, I think it would have been way better if they cut down on the Del Rio matches. It hurts the run. 3 matches with the same opponent means the matches have to be good and intriguing, and they could have done a Randy Orton match at SummerSlam. I think it would have established Sheamus' run if he were to have faced the Viper at the pay-per-view. Then again, he just got suspended for 60 days, and that's another story in itself, because I personally believe he would have faced both Chris Jericho and Orton in singles matches if they never got suspended. I think others would have looked at his run more positively. The Del Rio program just halted a part of his momentum, but luckily though, the run started off hot and ended hot with a surprisingly good program with a Big Show. Sheamus' character work during this run was basic babyface guy, making those weird jokes, this and that. Some of the jokes connect, others not so much, but my real focus here was on his matches, and he did well. He did well in that area. My personal favorite match of this title reign has to be Extreme Rules with Daniel Bryan. He really showed that it was a warrior, a fighting champion with that match, and after this, they started having him in these matches where it was tough for him to win, but he actually does it in the end, so that's nice. Alright, what do you guys think of this title reign? Please comment down below, and that's the first video. Make sure you hit the white noise on the like button, and perhaps the bro kick on the subscribe button. Peace, I'm out.